your eyes for a moment. Think about that one thing you've been pushing for, the health goal, the relationship, the career breakthrough. You've been grinding, haven't you? You've been waking up early, pushing through the exhaustion, rehearsing your stress. You're trying so hard. But here is the biological truth. The harder you try, the more you are signaling to your brain and the field that you don't have it. When you operate from a place of trying, you are operating from a state of lack. You are essentially telling the universe and your own nervous system, I am here and my goal is way over there. I have to fight to bridge the gap. That fight keeps you tethered to the very reality you're trying to escape. When you look at the mechanics of human behavior, you begin to see a recurring tragedy. The more a person desires a change, they tend to grip their current reality with a white-knuckled intensity they call trying. This trying is not a virtuous path to success. It is a physiological signal of distress. To understand why your best efforts often lead to a dead end, we have to look at the chemistry of the body and the electrical signaling in the body, electrical signaling in the brain. When you are in a state of high effort, you are fundamentally operating within a survival mechanism. You are viewing your goal as something that exists outside of you, something that must be chased, hunted, or wrestled into submission. This perception of distance between where you are and where you want to be creates a gap, and that gap is filled with the hormones of stress. Think about the last time you were desperately trying to solve a problem or force a breakthrough. Your heart rate likely increased, your breath became shallow, and your focus narrowed until you could see nothing but the obstacle in front of you. World of biology, this is the fight or flight response. Your brain has perceived a threat, in this case, the threat of not achieving your goal, and it has mobilized every ounce of your energy to deal with that perceived danger. But here is the paradox. Survival mode is designed for the short-term preservation of the body, not for the long-term creation of a new destiny. When you are under the influence of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, your brain's frontal lobe, the seat of your creativity, your intuition, and your ability to see new possibilities essentially goes offline. You are no longer a creator, you are a reactionary organism trying to outrun a shadow. The harder you try from this state, the more you reinforce the neural pathways of lack. Your body, which is your subconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between an actual external event and an internal emotion. So when you wake up and try hard to be successful while feeling the underlying pressure of failure, your body believes it is currently failing. You are literally practicing the feeling of not being there yet. Every time you push against the world with that desperate energy, you are broadcasting a signature into the quantum field that says, have this. And because the field responds not to what you want, but to who you are being, it can only return more of the experience of wanting. You become a master of the pursuit, but never the master of the catch. Effort, in its traditional sense, an emission of resistance. If there were no resistance, there would be no need for effort. By trying harder, you are actually acknowledging and validating the resistance. You are giving it life. You are saying that the obstacle is more real than the solution. Creates a state of brain incoherence. Your neurons begin firing in a fragmented, out of sync pattern. You're trying to think your way out of a hole, but because your brain is out of rhythm, your thoughts are weak and redirected back toward your current limitations. You become addicted to the struggle because the struggle provides a familiar chemical rush. Many people don't actually want the goal as much as they are addicted to the identity of the person who is working hard to get it. They wear their exhaustion like a badge of honor, unaware that their exhaustion is the very wall keeping them from the life they desire. To break this cycle, you must understand that change does not come from doing more of the same thing with more intensity. It comes from a shift in the state of being. You must move from the narrow focus of survival, where you are obsessed with time, the body, and the environment, into an open focus where you are no longer trying to get anything. When you drop the effort, you drop the stress. When you drop the stress, the brain begins to organize itself. The two hemispheres begin to communicate again. You move from the high frequency beta waves of crisis into the coherent alpha waves of creation. It is only in this state of relaxation that the how can present itself. You cannot see the door when you are too busy trying to kick down the wall. The moment you stop the frantic trying, you stop the interference pattern you've been projecting. You become still enough to actually receive the frequency of the future you've been chasing. You realize that the effort was never the bridge, it was the anchor. Only by letting go of the need to force the outcome can you finally step into the version of yourself that already possesses it, moving from the labor of the ego to the elegance of the divine flow. Understand why the sheer force of will so often fails us We must look at the invisible boundary between the conscious and the subconscious mind. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to change our reality from the seat of the conscious mind, thin sliver of awareness that accounts for only about 5% of who we actually are. This is the part of you that sets the New Year's resolutions, the part that reads the self-help books, and the part that says, I'm going to be successful today. But while that 5% is busy making plans, the other 95%, the subconscious mind, is running a completely different program. This 95% is a vast library of memorized behaviors, emotional reactive systems, and conditioned responses that function like a sophisticated computer operating system. When you try harder through the conscious mind, you are essentially a 5% pilot trying to steer a massive 5% ship that is already locked into an autopilot course set years ago. The analytical mind acts as the gatekeeper between these two worlds. Its job is to compare what is happening in the outside world with what we have stored in our internal database. When you try to force a change, you activate this analytical filter, and it immediately recognizes that you're new. Trying doesn't match your old. Being. Analytical mind thrives on logic, reason, and the familiar. When you attempt to push through a barrier using sheer effort, you are actually sharpening the very tool that keeps you separated from your subconscious operating system. The more you analyze your life, the more you think about your problems, and the more you obsess over the details of how your change will occur, the more you drive your brain into a state of high beta frequency. In this high beta state, the analytical mind becomes hypervigilant and extremely critical. It acts like a thick wall, preventing you from entering the deeper states of consciousness where real transformation occurs. You cannot will your way through this wall because the act of willing is itself a function of the conscious mind. It's like trying to use a flashlight to find the darkness. The very tool you are using prevents the environment you need to reach. This is why the hardest working people are often the most stuck. They are so deeply embedded in their analytical conscious effort that they never gain access to the subconscious programs that are actually driving their behavior. If you want to change your life, you have to get beyond the analytical mind. You have to learn how to turn down the volume of that critical voice and slow your brain waves down from the frantic pace of beta to the more rhythmic, receptive states of alpha and theta. In these slower frequencies that the door to the operating system opens. When you are in alpha or theta, you are no longer the person who is trying. You are the consciousness that can reprogram the body. Most people, however, do the exact opposite. They encounter a challenge and they turn up the analytical heat. They think more, they worry more, and they try to solve the problem using the same level of consciousness that created the problem in the first place. This creates a psychological friction. You are essentially trying to rewrite the hard drive of your life while the computer is running 1,000,000 miles an hour in an emergency mode. It's a biological impossibility to effect lasting change under those conditions. Subconscious mind does not respond to logic or trying. It responds to frequency and emotion. When you are stuck in the analytical mind, you are disconnected from the feeling of your future because you are too busy intellectualizing your present. You are stuck in the why and the how, which are the domains of the conscious mind. But the subconscious doesn't care about why. It only knows what it has been practiced to feel. If you have spent 20 years practicing the feeling of unworthiness, no amount of conscious trying to be worthy will work as long as that subconscious program is running. The analytical mind will simply reject the new thought of worthiness because it doesn't feel true based on the stored data. To bypass this, move beyond the self. You must enter a state where you are no longer defined by your past experiences, your name, your job, or your problems. In that void, the analytical mind relaxes its grip. The gatekeeper steps aside. Only then can you plant a new seed in the subconscious soil. This is why the most profound changes often happen when people finally give up the fight, when they reach a point of non-trying. The analytical mind finally surrenders. The brain waves slow down. For the first time, the conscious intention can merge with the subconscious power. You are no longer trying to force the ship to turn. You are finally at the helm of the autopilot itself, changing the coordinates at the source of the program. To truly understand the failure of effort, we must examine the profound distinction between surrender and submission, a nuance that most people miss in their drive for success. In our modern culture, we are conditioned to believe that surrender is a sign of weakness, a white flag raised in the face of defeat. We think it means giving up, being passive, or letting life trample over us. But in the realm of quantum creation and biological transformation, surrender is the most powerful, active state of consciousness a human being can inhabit. To surrender is to stop the interference pattern you are creating with your own ego. Trying hard, you are essentially telling in the field that you know better than the intelligence that manages the galaxies. You are trying to manage the how of your life through the lens of your limited personality. You are trying to force a specific outcome at a specific time in a specific way, and that very act of forcing creates a wall of resistance. Submission is a state of victimhood where you give up because you are tired of the fight. Surrender is the intention act of stepping out of your own way. When you surrender, you are essentially moving from a state of doing to a state of being. Most people are human doings. They define their worth and their progress by the sheer volume of their activity. They believe that they aren't pushing, they aren't moving. But if you are pushing against a reality that is already a reflection of your past thoughts and feelings, you are just reinforcing the old cycle. True surrender requires a level of trust that the ego finds terrifying. It requires you to have a clear intention, a vision of what you want, and then to marry that intention with an elevated emotion like gratitude or joy. Let go of the result. The moment you let go of the result is the moment you stop the stress response in your body. This is critical because as long as you are waiting for the event to happen so that you can feel the emotion of it, you are still in the old Newtonian model of cause and effect. You are waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. Surrender is the opposite. It is the realization that if you can feel the emotion of the future now, it must find you. Stop frantic trying. Create a vacuum. In physics, nature abhors a vacuum, and the quantum field is no different. When you clear away the cluttered, desperate energy of the ego, you make room for a greater intelligence to take over. This intelligence is the same one that keeps your heart beating, digests your food, and organizes the positions of the stars. It possesses a level of complexity and organization that your conscious, political mind can never replicate. By trying, you are essentially trying to fix a broken computer by hitting it with a hammer. By surrendering, you are allowing the software developer to go in and fix the code. You are acknowledging that your three-dimensional brain is limited in its perspective. You only see what is right in front of you based on what you see. But the field sees every possible path, coincidence, and every synchronic opportunity that can bring your vision into reality in a way you couldn't possibly imagine. The act of surrender is actually an act of coherence. When you force and try, your heart and brain go into chaos, fire signals that are jagged and inconsistent. But the moment you surrender, the moment you say, I have done the work of setting the intention, and now I trust the process, your nervous system relaxes into a state of parasympathetic dominance. Your heart begins to beat in a steady, rhythmic, coherent fashion, producing a measurable magnetic field that radiates out from your body. This field is the signal that carries your intention into the world. That signal is clouded by the noise of trying and the anxiety of when will it happen? The message is lost in static. But when you are in a state of surrendered trust, the signal is clear and powerful. You are no longer chasing your future. You are becoming a magnet for it. You are no longer the one doing the work. You have become the conduit through which the work is done. This requires you to become comfortable with the unknown. For most people, the unknown is a scary place because they associate it with lack of control. They would rather stay in their familiar pain, their familiar struggle, and their familiar trying than step into the void where they don't know what's going to happen next. The unknown is the only place where creation can happen. If you already know how it's going to happen, it's a known event, which means it's part of your past. To truly surrender is to fall in love with the unknown, to be okay with not having the answers. Trust that the intelligence that created you is far more capable of delivering your dream than your small, stressed out personality is. You lay down the burden of the how, and you stay focused only on the what and the feeling of the end. Space of surrendered being, the effort disappears, the resistance vanishes, and the life you were trying so hard to build begins to build itself around you, effortlessly and with a precision that defies logic. To grasp why the struggle of the will is so often a futile endeavor, we must confront the biological reality that your body is a physical record of your past. Most people wake up in the morning and immediately begin a process of remembering their problems. These problems are connected to specific people, places, and things at certain times and locations. The moment you start thinking about these problems, you are thinking of the past. Each of those thoughts is a corresponding emotion. Stress, frustration, or lack triggers a cascade of chemicals that tell your body exactly how to feel. By the time you've brushed your teeth, your body is emotionally living in the same past that created the very life you are now trying so hard to change. If you are trying to change your life while your body is chemically anchored to the past, you are essentially trying to drive a car forward while the tires are buried in concrete. You are exerting massive amounts of energy. You aren't going anywhere because your biology is working against your intention. For change to be real, your body must become the prophecy of your future rather than a record of your past. The body is the subconscious mind, not know the difference between an actual experience that creates an emotion and an emotion that you create by thought alone. When you are trying harder, you are usually waiting for the external world to change so that you can finally feel the relief, joy, or the success of your goal. You are waiting for the wealth to feel abundant or the healing to feel whole. But in the quantum model of reality, if you are waiting for the experience to happen before you feel the emotion, you are still functioning as a victim to your environment. You are saying that your internal state is dependent on external circumstances. To become a creator, you must reverse this process. Teach your body emotionally what your future will feel like before it happens. You have to signal new genes in new ways, and you do that by moving into the elevated state of the person who has already achieved the goal. When you sit in the silence and you begin to cultivate the feeling of gratitude, your body begins to believe that the event has already occurred. Gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. In our daily lives, we give thanks when something good has happened. Therefore, when you feel gratitude, you are signaling to your nervous system that the good thing is currently manifesting. The body begins to move out of the past and into the present moment, which is the only place where it can actually be created. You are trying to be successful. You are signaling that you are not successful. But if you are being successful by feeling the emotional frequency of success, the trying vanishes because there is no longer a gap between you and the dream. This is not a psychological trick. It is a neurological and chemical shift. You are literally changing your internal signature. And when you change your signature, you change the information you are broadcasting. People struggle because they keep their bodies in a state of emotional emergency. When the body is in survival, it is constantly looking for what is wrong, for what needs to be fixed, and for what might go wrong next. State of high alert makes it impossible for the body to rest in the feeling of the future. You cannot be in growth and repair at the same time you are in protection and defense. By trying so hard, you are staying in the defense mode. You are telling your cells that there is a battle to be won. But the body cannot heal and the mind cannot create while it is preparing for war. You have to give the body permission to stand down. You have to convince it through the power of your own internal focus. War is over and the victory has already been secured. This requires a level of emotional mastery that goes far beyond positive thinking. It requires you to sit with yourself until the old emotional programs of lack and effort lose their grip, and the new emotional state of fulfillment becomes your new baseline. As you begin to embody these elevated emotions, your heart begins to act as an amplifier to produce a coherent electromagnetic field that informs the brain. This coherence allows you to think new thoughts that are equal to that feeling. Now, instead of trying to force a new thought into a body that feels like the old self, you have a body and a mind that are finally in alignment. You are no longer divided against yourself. You aren't a person with a goal over there. You are a frequency that is consistent with the reality of that goal. The world then begins to respond to you in ways that seem miraculous. But they are simply the result of you no longer being the person who's trying. You have become someone else. You have moved your consciousness out of the predictable timeline of the past self and into the creative timeline of the future self. In this state, your body is no longer a weight dragging you back into the known, very vehicle that is pulling the future toward you, because it finally speaks the language of the destiny you've chosen. To truly understand why the friction of effort often leads to the exhaustion of the soul, look at the invisible geometry of the brain, specifically the concept of brain coherence. Most of our lives are spent in a state of fragmentation. We are thinking about one thing, feeling another, and doing a third. Internal division creates a massive amount of noise in our nervous system, a phenomenon we can measure as incoherence. When you are trying harder, you are almost always operating in a state of high beta brainwave activity. In this state, your brain is firing like a thunderstorm, with different compartments of the neocortex out of sync with one another. It is like a symphony where every musician is playing a different song at a different tempo. You are trying to force a result. Because your internal signals are crossed, you are essentially canceling out your own power. You are pushing the accelerator while your transmission is in neutral, creating a lot of heat and smoke, but very little forward motion. The secret to moving from the struggle into the flow of creation lies in the synchronization of these neural patterns. When you stop the frantic act of trying and instead focus on creating a state of inner order, the brain begins to fire in a holistic, integrated fashion. This is what we call coherence. In a coherent brain, the right and left hemispheres begin to communicate with one another. The front of the brain and the back of the brain start to pulse in a unified rhythm. When this happens, you are no longer a house divided. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical energy are all pointed in the same direction. This creates a laser-like focus of intention. A coherent brain is a powerful transmitter of information into the quantum field. If you think of your mind as a radio station, incoherence is the static between the channels. No matter how much you try to hear the music, if you are stuck in the static, you will never get the message. But the moment you achieve coherence, the signal becomes clear, loud, and undeniable. This state of coherence is not something you can achieve through more trying, because the act of trying is what created the incoherence in the first place. You achieve it by slowing down. You achieve it by moving your attention away from the outer world, problems and schedules, and placing it on the inner world of energy and space. When you shift your focus from the somebody you are trying to be to the nobody, that is your pure consciousness, the brain's regulatory systems begin to reset. The analytical mind, which has been hyper-vigilant and stressed, finally begins to relax. As the brain waves move from the jagged peaks of high beta into the rhythmic valleys of alpha, the nervous system begins to self-organize. You move out of the survival brain and into the creative brain. This is where the magic happens. A state of neural harmony. You aren't working against the world, you are working with the fundamental laws of energy. When your brain is coherent, your heart follows suit. The heart is the strongest biological oscillator in the body. It has its own complex nervous system. When you move out of the try and into a state of appreciation or heart-centered focus, the heart begins to beat in a consistent, wave-like pattern. This heart coherence then sends a signal back to the brain, telling the emotional centers that it is safe to create. This is the physiological foundation of what people call the zone, or the flow state. In this state, time seems to disappear. You are no longer conscious of your body or your environment. You are simply a stream of focused consciousness. The effort has vanished because the resistance has been removed. You are no longer trying to bridge a gap between yourself and your goal. You have become the bridge itself. The energy that was previously wasted on stress and trying is now liberated and becomes available for healing, for insight, and for the manifestation of new possibilities. Most people are afraid to stop trying because they think that if they stop pushing, it will fall apart. But the truth is that your pushing is what is keeping the old broken pieces together. When you stop the effort and prioritize coherence, you are allowing the intelligence of life to reorganize your reality into a higher order from the Newtonian model of predicting the future, based on the past to the quantum model of creating the future from the field. You realize that a coherent signal is infinitely more effective than a million incoherent actions. 1 hour of being in a state of high coherence is more productive than a month of trying harder. From a state of stress, you begin to understand that you are not a physical being trying to change the physical world. You are a conscious being interacting with the field of energy. When you change the energy of your brain and heart through the cultivation of coherence, the physical world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match your new frequency. You stop being the person who works hard for their dreams and you become the person whose dreams work hard to find them. To truly understand the trap of constant effort, we must look at the specific frequency of the brain when we are obsessed with outcomes. Sphinx known as high, beta. Most people spend their entire lives in this frequency. It is the signature of the modern world. When you are in high, beta, you are in a state of emergency. You are hyper, focused on your body. The time you have left, environment around you, you are constantly scanning for what is wrong or what might go wrong next. This is the frequency of the try. When you say you are trying harder, what you are really saying is that you are amping up the intensity of your high, beta brain waves. You are narrowing your focus on the problem until the problem is all you can see. It creates a massive amount of friction in the nervous system because high, beta is designed for short-term survival, not for long-term creation of a new destiny. You cannot heal your body, and you certainly cannot manifest a new future, while your brain is firing like a lightning storm in a vacuum. This state of emergency keeps you trapped in the three-dimensional reality of cause and effect. In this model, to get something, you have to go and get it. You have to move your body through space and time to achieve a result. While there is nothing wrong with taking action, if your action is driven by the frantic frequency of high beta, you are essentially working against the brain. You are trying to change a physical reality using physical force, which is the most difficult and least efficient way to create. The more you try from this state, the more you reinforce the separation between you and your goal. You are here, the thing you want is over there, and you are exhausted by the distance. This exhaustion is not just physical, it is energetic. You are leaking power into the environment because you are obsessed with the external world. You are trying to control every variable, every person, and predict every outcome. This level of hypervigilance is a prison. To break free, you must learn to shift your brain waves from beta into alpha and eventually into theta. Alpha is the bridge between the conscious mind and the subconscious, the state of relaxation where the tribe begins to dissolve. In alpha, you move from a narrow focus to an open focus. Instead of focusing on things, you begin to focus on space and energy. Shift in attention causes the different parts of the brain that were firing out of sync during your high. Beta, trying to start communicating again, they begin to synchronize. As you move deeper into theta, you enter the realm of the subconscious, where you are no longer defined by your personality or past. This is the frequency of suggestion. This is where you can plant the seed of a new life without the analytical mind, digging it up every 5 minutes to see if it's growing yet. When you are in these slower frequencies, you are no longer trying to change, you are actually in the state of change. The tragedy of the high beta trap is that most people think their stress is the fuel for their success. They think that if they aren't worried, if they think they are trying hard, they are being lazy. But the truth is that the most creative and powerful states available to a human being are found when the try has been surrendered. When you drop into alpha and theta, you are tapping into a level of intelligence that is far greater than your conscious mind. You are accessing the field where all possibilities exist. In this space, you aren't trying to force a door open. You are realizing that there are no doors. You are no longer a victim of time, because in these states, time becomes fluid. You can collapse the distance between you and your future by simply matching the frequency of that future. You cannot match that frequency if you are stuck in the frequency of, I don't have it yet, which is exactly what high beta represents. The shift from high beta to alpha is the shift from being a seeker to being a creator. The seeker is always trying, always looking, and always wanting. The creator is being observing and receiving. When you stop the frantic effort, you stop the noise. And when you stop the noise, you can finally hear the signal of the future you've been calling for. You have to be willing to let go of the hard-working identity that has been your shield for so long. You have to be willing to be still. Most people find the stillness more difficult than the hardest labor, because in the stillness, they have to face the emptiness of their own current frequency. But it is only in that emptiness, that zero-point field, that you can be rebuilt. When you move out of the emergency of the try and into the elegance of the beat, the brain organizes itself into a state of supreme coherence. You stop trying to move your body through space to find your future. You instead stay in the present moment and allow the future to come. You become the magnet and the world becomes metal. To truly transcend the limitations of a life defined by struggle, we must move toward the ultimate state of transformation, which is the act of becoming no body, no thing, nowhere, and in no time. This is the moment where you finally lay down the heavy burden of your identity and step into the vastness of pure consciousness. Most of us spend our waking hours obsessed with somebody we have spent years constructing. We are obsessed with our names, our careers, our past mistakes, our bank accounts, and our physical bodies. When we say we are trying harder, it is usually this specific identity, this somebody, that is doing the crime. But here is the profound reality: you cannot create a new life while you are still being the person who is stuck in the old one. You want to experience a reality you have never experienced before. You have to get beyond the self that has been conditioned by everything you've already known. You have to move out of the familiar, predictable world of the senses and into the boundless field of the one. When you are trying, you are very much a somebody. You are a person in a body located in a specific place, staring at a clock and worrying about a problem. Keeps you completely tethered to the three-dimensional world of matter. In the world of matter, change is slow, labor-intensive, and requires massive amounts of physical effort. But in the quantum field, invisible realm of energy and information that underlies the physical world, there is no space and no time. Everything exists as a wave of possibility. To access that field, you have to become a match for it. The field is not a person. It has no face, no schedule, and it isn't located in a specific city. Therefore, to enter that door, you have to leave your somebody ness at the threshold. You have to become pure consciousness. You have to reach a state where you are so focused on the inner world that you lose track of your physical body. You forget the people you have grievances with. You lose the sense of where you are sitting, and you lose the track of time. You become a nobody, nowhere, and in no time. It is in this precise moment, the moment you are no longer defined by your past or your environment, that you are finally free to create. When with their body, you are no longer limited by the biological cravings, the hormonal addictions, and the old emotional patterns of the personality. You are no longer trying to change. You have moved into the void where all change originates. People find this terrifying because the ego fears its owners. The ego wants to stay with somebody, even if that somebody is miserable, because at least that misery is familiar. But the try is just the ego's way of maintaining control. A way of saying, I'm still here and I'm working on it. By surrendering the identity and entering the void, you are saying, I am willing to be nothing so that I can become everything. This is the ultimate act of courage. The transition from the finite world of matter to the infinite world of energy. When you are in this state of pure awareness, you are in the unified field. This is a place where all potentials exist simultaneously. You are no longer trying to reach a goal in the future, because in the quantum there is no future, there is only the eternal now. From this 0 point, you don't have to try to manifest wealth or health or love. Instead, you simply select the frequency of that reality and experience it so completely in your consciousness that it becomes more real than the chair you are sitting on. You are no longer a somebody. You're trying to get something. The separation between you and the outcome collapses. You aren't chasing the dream, you are the dream. You aren't pushing toward the future, you are pulling the future into the present. The moment you return to your body and your life, you are no longer the same person who began the process. You have brought a new frequency back into the world of matter. Reason trying harder never works is that it keeps you locked in the density of the physical self. It keeps you fighting against the laws of physics. But when you become nobody, you are no longer fighting, you are harmonizing with the source of all things. You are accessing the operating system of reality itself. In this space, how is irrelevant because the intelligence of the field handles the details. Your only job is to remain in that state of being until it becomes your new home. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the architect of your destiny. You realize that the greatest work you will ever do is not the work of the hands or the work of the will, but the work of getting beyond yourself. When you finally master the ability to step out of the way, the life you've been trying so hard to create will suddenly appear, not because you worked for it, but because you finally became the version of yourself that was consistent with its existence. This is the shift from the labor of the human to the power of the divine consciousness within. Stop being the victim of your own hard work. The moment you stop trying to force the door open is the moment the door disappears entirely. You've realized there was never a wall between you and your dream, only the frequency of your own doubt. Step into the vacuum of the unknown. Lay down the hard work of the ego and pick up the clear intention of the spirit. When your heart and your head aligned, you don't have to go anywhere to find your future. Your future will find you.